Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more heartwarming stories. The city streets buzzed with life as people hurried past the towering skyscrapers, lost in their own worlds. Among them, Billionaire CEO Nathan Caldwell strode purposefully, his mind preoccupied with the relentless demands of his empire. Meetings, deals, profits. His world revolved around numbers and power. He had no time for distractions, no patience for anything that didn't fit into his carefully structured life. But then, out of nowhere, a small voice cut through the noise. "Hey, sir, wait." Nathan barely noticed at first, too absorbed in his thoughts. But the voice came again, a little breathless, but full of certainty. "Sir, my mom carries your photo in her handbag." That made him stop. He turned, his sharp blue eyes landing on a boy no older than 7, standing a few feet away. The kid had tousled brown hair, an oversized hoodie, and a determined look on his face. He wasn't nervous or shy, just sure of himself, as if stopping a billionaire CEO on a busy street was the most normal thing in the world. Nathan frowned, glancing around. A bodyguard shifted closer, but he lifted a hand, signaling him to wait. The kid didn't seem like a threat, just unexpected. "My mom has your picture," the boy repeated, as if Nathan hadn't heard him the first time. There was something about the way he said it, like it was important, like it meant something. Nathan studied him for a moment, searching for a catch. People approached him all the time, but it was usually for money, business deals, or some sort of favor. This was different. The kid wasn't asking for anything. He was just delivering a message. "And why would your mom have my photo?" Nathan asked, his voice controlled but curious. The boy hesitated for the first time, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. I don't know exactly, but she looks at it a lot. Sometimes she cries." Nathan felt an odd pull in his chest, but he ignored it. People cried over all sorts of things. He had been in the news enough. Maybe she was just someone who admired or hated him. Either way, it wasn't his concern. "Listen, kid, Wait!" The boy grabbed his sleeve, his small fingers clutching the expensive fabric of Nathan's suit. "Can you come with me? Just for a second. I think she needs to see you." Nathan inhaled sharply. He should walk away. He had a meeting in 15 minutes, and his assistant was already texting him, reminding him of his schedule. He should tell the kid no, shake him off, and get on with his day. But something about the way the boy looked at him, hopeful, expectant, completely convinced that Nathan Caldwell, billionaire CEO, would actually follow him, made him pause. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Where is she?" The boy's face lit up, as if he had just won the lottery. "Not far, just over there." He pointed toward a small cafe at the corner of the street. Nathan hesitated again. Every instinct told him to walk away, to dismiss this as some ridiculous coincidence. But his feet were already moving, following the boy through the crowd. As they approached the cafe, his stomach tightened. He didn't believe in fate or destiny, but something about this felt significant, and he had no idea why. The cafe door chimed as they stepped inside, the rich scent of coffee and warm pastries filling the air. Nathan glanced around, his eyes scanning the tables, and then he saw her. A woman sat near the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup, staring blankly outside. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she wore a simple sweater, but there was something undeniably familiar about her. Nathan's breath caught. She turned her head, her gaze sweeping over the cafe absently, until it landed on him. The cup in her hand slipped, clattering against the table. Her eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, barely above a whisper, she said his name. Nathan? And just like that, the past crashed into the present. Nathan's world seemed to tilt for a moment as he stood frozen, staring at the woman before him. A dozen memories crashed into his mind, hazy but unmistakable. The laughter of someone who used to mean everything, late-night conversations, promises that were never kept. And now, after all these years, here she was, the little boy, her son, beamed between them, oblivious to the storm of emotions brewing in Nathan's chest. "Mom, look! I told you I'd find him," she barely seemed to hear. Her eyes locked onto Nathan, disbelief written all over her face. "Nathan," she whispered again, as if saying his name might confirm he was real. Nathan swallowed, pushing down the lump forming in his throat. Olivia. The name felt strange on his tongue, like an old song he hadn't sung in years. The last time he had seen her, things had been different. They were different. He had been younger, reckless, chasing ambitions so fiercely that everything else had blurred in comparison. She stood up slowly, as if unsure whether to run or stay. What are you doing here?" Nathan let out a breathless chuckle, shaking his head. "I think that's my question." He glanced at the boy, who was now bouncing, slightly on his heels, excitement radiating from him. "Your son just stopped me on the street and told me you carry my picture in your handbag." Olivia's face paled slightly. Her fingers twitched against the table, as if debating whether to reach for something or hide it. For a moment, she seemed at war with herself, struggling for the right words. The boy, his son, Nathan realized with a jolt, grinned proudly. "See, Mom, I told you he'd come." Nathan's heart slammed against his ribs. The realization hit him all at once, yet his mind struggled to accept it. His son. Was it possible? His eyes flickered back to Olivia, searching for answers. But instead of speaking, she simply exhaled, as if she had been holding her breath for years. "Ethan, sweetheart," she said softly, bending slightly to meet the boy's gaze. "Why don't you go grab a cookie from the counter?" Ethan's face scrunched up. "But Mom, Please." Her voice wavered, her expression unreadable. With a dramatic sigh, Ethan relented. "Fine." He walked toward the counter, but not before flashing Nathan another bright smile. As soon as he was out of earshot, Olivia turned back to Nathan, her expression tense. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." Nathan blinked, his pulse pounding in his ears. "So it's true." His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. He's mine." Olivia closed her eyes for a second before nodding. Yes. Nathan felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. His carefully constructed world, one built on power, control, and unshakable certainty, was suddenly thrown into chaos. He had a son, a child he never knew existed, and for 7 years, Olivia had kept it from him. His fists clenched at his sides, emotions warring within him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia's eyes darkened. "Because, Nathan, you left." Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "You made it clear that your career came first, that nothing and no one would stand in your way. And when I found out I was pregnant, you were already gone." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You should have told me anyway." Olivia let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "And then what? Would you have dropped everything and come running? Would you have given up your billion-dollar empire to be a father?" Nathan opened his mouth, but no words came, because the truth was, back then, he might not have. He had been so obsessed with success, with building his name, that nothing else had mattered. He had told himself he was doing it for a better future, for the security and power that would make life easier one day. But at what cost? I deserve to know, he said, after a long pause. No matter what you thought, I had a right to be in his life. Olivia's gaze softened, but the hurt still lingered. Maybe you're right, but I had to think about Ethan, not just you. I didn't want him to grow up as some afterthought, waiting for a father who was too busy conquering the world to care about him. Nathan ran a hand down his face, exhaling sharply. And now? What do I do now, Olivia? She hesitated, glancing toward Ethan, who was happily munching on a cookie at the counter, completely unaware of the life-altering conversation happening behind him. That depends on you, she murmured. I won't stop you from knowing him, Nathan, but I need to know you're not going to disappear again. Nathan looked at his son, and something inside him shifted. He wasn't sure what kind of father he could be, or if he even deserved the chance. But for the first time in his life, business deals and profits didn't seem as important as the little boy grinning at the cashier, completely unaware of the storm he had just set in motion. And for the first time in years, Nathan didn't know what his next move would be. Nathan had spent his entire life making quick decisions, closing impossible deals, and securing his place among the most powerful people in the world. Yet, as he stood there, watching Ethan laugh at something the cashier said, he realized that this was the hardest decision he had ever faced. He wasn't just looking at a child. He was looking at his son, a boy who had grown up without him, a boy who had no idea that the man standing just a few feet away was supposed to be there for him all along. His chest tightened. He had missed everything. Ethan's first steps, his first words, his birthdays, all those tiny moments that made up a childhood. And now, after all these years, could he really walk into his life and expect to belong? Olivia was watching him closely, her expression unreadable. I don't need promises, Nathan, she said quietly. I need to know what you really want, not just for today, not just because you're standing here feeling guilty, but for the long run. Do you want to be his father? Or is this just another thing you'll walk away from when it gets complicated? The words stung, but he knew she had every right to ask. He had spent years running, convincing himself that success mattered more than anything. But standing here, looking at the life he had unknowingly left behind, he realized something terrifying. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about the next deal, the next investment, the next billion. He cared about Ethan. Taking a slow breath, he turned to Olivia, his voice steady. I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing. I don't want to miss anything else. Something flickered in her eyes. Caution, hope, maybe a little disbelief. Nathan! Before she could finish, Ethan came running back, his hands sticky from the chocolate chip cookie he had been eating. He looked up at Nathan with a bright smile. Mom, can he have dinner with us? Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He had spent years winning over investors, but this was the most important question he had ever been asked. He looked at Olivia, searching for permission. She hesitated, then let out a soft sigh, something shifting in her posture. Okay, she said finally. Dinner, Ethan cheered. Yes, Mom makes the best spaghetti, but she always forgets the garlic bread. So maybe you can remind her. Nathan chuckled, a warmth spreading through his chest. I'll make sure she doesn't forget. And for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the past or the future. He was exactly where he needed to be,